Hello there, YouTube. I hope you're doing well. And I decided I'd start off the new year with a bit of a bang, something I would normally not do, but I was curious. So normally, even just Skull Merchant now after her rework, she is not as good at contesting generators, holding a 3-gen, etc., etc. That was the whole point of the rework. However, now she is just absurdly unfun to go against in chase. Nobody really wants to play against her. I hate playing against her. Most people hate playing against her still. She's just not a fun killer overall. Instead of holding a 3 or a 4-gen, her new role is just complete zoning and shutting the map down in pathways and basically injuring people for free, stacking status effects, getting faster, and just kind of making chases miserable. So that's her new role. Unfortunately, it's not much better than her old one. However, I had an idea for the new year. What if we tried to convert her back to her old role? What if we brought back Chess Merchant and we played ourselves a great old game of chess in Dead by Daylight once again? And to the survivors in which had the unfortunate circumstance of playing against me while I was recording this video, I've prepared a letter for you. Let me open it up here. Here we go. All right. Dear gamers that had to play against mine Chess Merchant, I doth sincerely apologize. 'Tis for content's sake, and as such, might not but be done for the betterment of mankind itself. Once again, apologies for the inconvenience. Benisons upon thou. All right. Now that I got that out of the way, apologies for the sins I've committed upon humanity, let's get to the Chess Merchant games. The first match started out on The Game, which is actually one of the better 3-genning maps, so they were already in trouble and I was already at an advantage. There were only 2 generators on the top floor, but there were 5 on the bottom floor. So you already know where I went. I rarely went up to the top, and I just set up all of my drones on the bottom floor to make it a miserable experience to even try to walk down there. In fact, the generators were so well set up for me, I didn't even try to select a 3-gen. I just set up drones all across the bottom, and it worked out just fine. Basically, anytime they got any progress on one of the generators, I would just kick it, hit it with oppression, hit other generators with oppression, hit it with eruption, hit it with overcharge, and move on to the next generator. If they disabled one of my drones, I would just get rid of it and place another one down. Easy peasy. And anytime I could get it down, I would hit the survivor and down them in order to get my jolt off if there's any generators nearby, and also pop my eruption to get aura reading and to hit the generators I already kicked and spammed the kick on for an additional percentage. The tweaks in which they made to original Skull Merchant makes it to where the drones don't go through the floor anymore or up above, so you can't hit with that. It's not an entire zone, so you have to be hit by the rays. The problem, though, is that if you have to run away from the killer, if a drone is set up in a pathway to get to a generator or on the generator itself, you're still going to get tagged. And the tags don't really go away. Once you get hit 3 times by it, you're going to get broken, you're going to get hit with a claw trap, and you're going to be screwed over by that. On top of that, my add-ons made it to where if they had a claw trap on and they just kept running into the drones and getting hit by the beams, well, they were going to get hit with obliviousness, so they had no idea where I was, and they were also going to get hit with no skill check warnings, so they would constantly be missing skill checks, including my overcharge skill checks. And I wasn't going for hooks. I just kept downing them, and I just kept jolting the generators, kicking, replacing my drones over and over. They started to kind of give in to the momentum. I kept getting downs. I kept getting jolts. Eventually, they started to give in, and I just kept downing them. And eventually, they kind of just folded. I got bored. They folded. Ace DC'd. And we just kind of went into the next one. Next up, the match was on Haddonfield, which used to have a really good 3-gen, but they not so long ago patched that out, and so now it actually has one of the weaker setups for a 3-gen in the game. So it was kind of a struggle to figure out exactly where I set up, but I eventually found a setup here between this house where there was one upstairs, one out in the middle of the street, and then one at the back of the map. And I could just walk through the house with ease while setting up 2 different drones on the bottom floor and the top floor next to the generator. So that was my 3-gen. So setup I did, and they became aware pretty quickly of what was going on. They were trying to taunt me to get me away from the area, but they still started doing some generators outside of the area, and they just kept trying to pull me away. It wasn't working. Then they tried to infiltrate a little bit, and it's safe to say that did not stop me. I was going to play this game of chess. I was going to checkmate them. And I'd just like to throw in here, I wasn't going for a full server shutdown on any of these games. I just wanted to see if I could make it work. If I got a good fight, well, then I would fight until the end, until they gave in, or until they bled out, or until the server shut down. They started working on the Haddonfield house generator, and I came in, interrupted them, kicked it, and just went back to my 3-gen. Again, if I could go outside of the area because I know that they're not working on my 3-gen, I would do so. One of them ran back towards the area in which I had it set up again, and so I pushed them away, and we just kind of did this little dance. I kept interrupting the middle generator every now and then, but they really didn't go for my 3-gen all that much. They were mostly trying to pull me away from it. And I gotta just say, by this point, I was already bored of this idea. I suffered for content's sake, okay? They were suffering way more than me, but I was already over it. Eventually, they started trying to loop and get me to go away from the 3-gen once again, and you could see that they started to not care anymore. They kind of were done with this already. They did not want to deal with this, and so they just started throwing themselves at me, trying to get any form of a chase in, and I obliged by shutting down the loop. I kept downing them around the Haddonfield house once again. They didn't really have any more progress on that generator. They didn't have any progress on my 3-gen still. They just kind of kept going down. And I moved one of my drones that was meant to cut off even more pathways to my 3-gen over to the bottom middle of the Haddonfield house. And, well, they didn't really like that. Eventually, Rebecca just DC'd because she wasn't getting hooked and just kept getting slugged, which that's completely fair. Again, I felt bad for the survivors the whole way through this. I would absolutely DC against me in these games. I just want that to be crystal clear. I am the villain of the story. After a bit of time, Ada gave up and she just DC'd as well. She was going next. She was going to let the bot handle it. Completely fair and understandable. Eventually, some form of progress started to happen on my setup for the 3-gen, where Jill just kind of gave up, but I promptly pulled her right off of my generator, kicked it, and gave Dwight the death stare, as he knew this game was going nowhere. And to cut the very long story short, eventually they just kind of gave in, tried to get some chases in the 3-gen area, and promptly got zoned out of it. And I gave in and gave them mercy because I felt bad for them. I wanted out of the match at this point. I was tired and they were too. I got rid of the bots and went on to the next game. They didn't even get more than I think 10% progress on my 3-gen. So Chess Merchant once again strikes in marvelous success. Now, by this point, you might be thinking, well, everyone's just giving up in about 10 minutes. Nobody wants to play against it. So how do we know if the Chess Merchant still works? And that's where Red Forest Match 3 comes in. This is where I had probably the worst setup of generators to defend out of any of the maps, even worse than Haddonfield. The generators were quite split up and in their own sections. One of them had 4 sides available, so I couldn't put down just one drone to defend the whole thing. There was one side never covered by it. So already at the start of the match, I was at a disadvantage for setting up my chessboard. But I still persevered, and I tried to set up a 4 to 5 gen area because I wasn't exactly sure which generators to try to defend. They were all kind of far away from one another or had some issues with trying to get the setup. They eventually all started trying to push this one generator, so I decided, you know what, this is where I'm going to set up one of my drones. I'm going to defend it. It's near the other generators as well in this tight little area. They were disabling my drones. They were trying to get through them. They kept getting hit by the claw traps and overall kept giving me haste, kept giving me undetectable, and I just kept jolting, kept slugging, kept getting eruption. I got a few downs pretty quickly and got this generator down quite a bit. They kept running back to the killer shack over here over and over. I thought about putting a drone there, but I realized if they're over there, they're not breaking my 3-gen or 4-gen or 5-gen or whatever the hell we're calling this. I don't know anymore. They kept putting up a fight and really tried their hardest to pull me away from the generators I kept going to and had drones on. They were going to the corners of the map, trying to pull me to the other side, and sometimes I would oblige, sometimes I wouldn't. It depended if I was a bit more confident in them not having any progress on the generators or not. And when I did that, I could get the down, get a jolt if there's a gen nearby, and also hit with eruption once again. And for the first section, they were getting hit by my drones quite a bit, and they did keep trying to disable them, but unfortunately, it just didn't really luck out for them. It was clear that this was the generator they were trying to break, so I put my drones down over and over. They kept going to the killer shack. I kept kicking it. You know the drill. But eventually, they broke it. I spent a little bit too much time chasing over in that corner that I was talking about by the hill, and 2 of them were able to sit on a gen after disabling my drone and complete it. Now, I had the real game begin with my actual 3-gen. No other team had gotten to this point in the other 2 matches, so this was going to be the ultimate test. It wasn't even a great 3-gen. They weren't super close together. I had to do quite the maneuvering in order to get between them. And again, one of the generators had 4 sides open, so I had to use 2 drones to cover the generator fully by the rays. And they put up one hell of a fight. They kept trying to push for multiple different generators. They, for the most part, tried to go for this one over by the hill, but to no avail. I would always come back. I would always replace the drone they just disabled, and I would always kick it yet again. Sometimes they'd be a little bit more greedy, and I was able to get a hit off, and, well, then they had to either go and heal or try to push forward again, and might give me the down, might give me the jolt, might give me the eruption. Then they started to try to push a little bit for the middle generator, which was even more difficult for them because I had multiple drones set up both at the stairwell to get up there and in the middle, but also at the top there where they would kind of struggle to hear or see me coming if I just dropped down another drone. They kept trying to push this one over by the hill the most. Eventually, they also tried to push for the one over at the corner that had the 4 sides. I'm shocked they didn't try to push for that one more, but eventually they started to try to push all of them. But one of them kept making the mistake of getting caught, getting downed, and then they were in a 3v1 situation where someone had to go and pick that person up, or they were going to bleed out. All 4 of the survivors spent a good chunk of this match on the ground because eventually they got slugged and they got stuck on the floor. But they put up quite the fight. However, the need to disable my drones and the fact that they kept getting hit by my claw traps as well as my undetectable when I kept replacing the drones was really getting to them and really messed up their momentum. I think most other killers, even with this build, would not really be able to pull this off, but because of the time they had to spend either crouching along the way and being super careful of where my drones were placed, or having to spend the time disabling them, getting injured, dealing with the claw traps, me being able to see where they are, and just constantly bouncing back and forth between that, as well as my stealth and built-in haste from them getting claw trapped, they were struggling quite a bit to keep up the momentum. This dance went on for a good while. I would say probably about 15 minutes. They kept trying to push for 1 or 2 generators. They would get a little greedy. They would get tagged by the drones. They wouldn't hear me coming because I kept replacing my drones. And eventually, one of them would go down. Generators would get erupted, and then I would also jolt any generators that were nearby. Progress resets, the cycle continues, and they just kept bleeding out over and over. They started bleeding out. First, it was Naya, then it was Bill, who just ran face first right into me, just trying to at least buy some time for them to maybe work on one of the other generators. He goes down, hill generator gets jolted, he bleeds out as well. We now have 2 survivors completely bled out. We have a 3-gen with no progress on any of the generators, and the other 2 survivors still alive have claw trap progress on them. One of them gets hit, and they both have been bled out for at least 3 minutes each in a 24-minute match so far. Yunjin tries to start something on this generator, but to no luck. Yui eventually bleeds out, and now it's just Yunjin left. Yunjin gets the hatch, and the game is over. They put in their all. They tried their best to deal with it, but unfortunately, the drones management and the perks just kind of stacked all on top of them, and they couldn't break it. Even in this setup here, where the generators were placed in pretty good spots and made it very difficult for me to get to them and get to them stealthily, they still couldn't break these. Overall, 3 matches of Chess Merchant and 3 matches where Chess Merchant came out victorious. The last match in which was actually a fight, but unfortunately, I don't even think they got a generator halfway done in order to break that 3-gen. So yes, 3-gen Chess Merchant is absolutely still possible. And yes, I do feel like a degenerate after these 3 matches. And no, I did not have fun here at all. I did not feel like a winner. I felt like a big old loser. But I had to know if it was still possible, and it looks like it, and it looks to be just as miserable to deal with. I'm sure there are some top-level teams that could totally break this, and groups that could totally work through this. But would they have fun? No, I don't think they would. I think dealing with this is just as bad as it was before in terms of fun. So, the conclusion, is Chess Merchant still possible in 2024? Yes, very much so. Is it beatable? Probably. Would it be fun to do so? No, probably not. Was it worth it making this video? I don't know, man. I don't know. I,